I remember the sound before I remember the numbers, the faint ticking of the wall clock in my small apartment, the hum of the refrigerator in the corner, the uneven rhythm of my own breath in the silence of the night. I held a single banknote in my hand, the first I had ever earned without exchanging hours directly for it. It smelled faintly of ink and something metallic, like freedom pressed into paper. That moment, small and almost invisible to anyone else, was the seed of everything. The realization that money could arrive while I slept, while I walked, while I did nothing at all, that thought haunted me, pulled me forward. Don't forget to subscribe, to leave a comment, and to press the like button before we dive in. Every gesture helps this message reach more people. In those early days, I didn't have a strategy. I only had hunger. I worked jobs that numbed me, offices with fluorescent lights that buzzed like trapped insects. The mornings were always cold, even in summer, because I carried inside me a chill of fear. Fear that my life would vanish into routines that belonged to other people's plans. Yet at night, I read. I read until the pages smelled of old paper and cheap ink, until my eyes blurred and the ticking of the clock slowed into the rhythm of possibility. Passive income. It sounded like a phrase from a magazine, slick and unreal. But in truth, it was the most active thing I had ever chased. It demanded more than my labor. It demanded my imagination. I tried small things at first, selling a product online, cheap and unimpressive, just to see if the machine would turn without me. It was clumsy, and it failed more often than it worked. But every failure left a trace, like keys jangling in my pocket, reminding me that somewhere there was a door waiting to be opened. I still remember the first morning I woke up to see a notification money transferred, a sale made, while I was still tangled in the warmth of my sheets. The air smelled of coffee brewing in the kitchen, and yet I barely noticed it. I sat there, staring at the glow of my screen, the numbers too small to change my life, but big enough to shift my mind. It wasn't wealth yet, but it was proof. Proof that the world would not collapse if I stepped back, that the gears could turn without my hands forcing them. And yet, even as the system began to take shape, I found myself staring into mirrors late at night, asking whether freedom was really as simple as money without effort. The mirror didn't answer, but the reflection of my tired eyes reminded me. Every shortcut still demands a price. I thought of time then, how each second slipped away unnoticed, the sound of the clock now louder than it had ever been. I began to see passive income not as an escape, but as a trade. I was trading present effort, sleepless nights, and endless learning for future silence. The silence of mornings when the money arrived before I had even spoken a word. If my words resonate with you, subscribe, comment your thoughts, and leave a like. It supports the journey. I kept building. Each stream of income was like a river carved through stone. Slow at first, invisible in its power, then suddenly unstoppable. Rental income, dividends, automated stores. Each one had its own rhythm, its own scent, its own set of shadows and risks. I remember the damp smell of the first apartment I ever invested in, walls stained, keys heavy and cold in my hand. Everyone else saw failure in that space. I saw a machine waiting to breathe. There were nights when I lost more than I gained, when the silence of the room was broken by my own heartbeat, pounding with regret. Money can vanish faster than it arrives, and in those moments I learned. Passive income doesn't mean effortless. It means front-loading the pain, absorbing the lessons, and trusting that tomorrow will reward today's sacrifice. Support this channel by subscribing and sharing your dream below. Time passed, but the smell of coffee in the morning and the ticking of the clock at night remained the constants of my journey. I realized that passive income was never truly about money. It was about reclaiming time, the most fragile currency of all. It was about waking up and choosing what to do with the daylight instead of renting it out to the highest bidder. I remember one evening, standing by the window of my office, the city outside glowing with lights like scattered coins. The glass was cold under my fingertips, and in the reflection I saw myself, older, quieter, but carrying the same hunger I had as a boy. And I thought, maybe that is the truth of it, that passive income is not about wealth, but about silence. The silence of knowing that your life runs on your terms, that while you sleep, your work continues, like a shadow moving across the floor. If you stayed with me until the end, subscribe, like, and comment, so that these words will find you again tomorrow night. The nights grew longer the deeper I went into it. There is a certain sound to working late, when the city outside is quiet, and only the echo of your own movements fills the room. Papers rustling, the faint clack of keys, the low hum of electricity in the walls, it all became a rhythm that accompanied me through those endless hours. And yet, in those nights, when everyone else was asleep, I felt closest to the truth of passive income, because it was in those hours that I sowed the seeds that would one day grow without me watching. I remember the smell of ink from contracts I barely understood at first, the texture of cheap paper that bound me to obligations I didn't yet know how to fulfill. I was young, and my knowledge was thin. But I believed in the idea. Build something once, let it live forever. I studied the patterns of those who came before me, old books filled with notes in the margins, lectures whispered in crowded halls, voices on the street selling dreams. And through all that noise, I began to hear the subtle rhythm of reality. There is no income without effort, not even passive income. The difference is only in when you pay the price. Don't forget to subscribe, to leave a comment, and to press the like button before we dive deeper. Every gesture helps this message reach more people. I saw friends chase quick money and lose themselves in the fire of their own impatience. I smelled the bitter smoke of burned capital, the acrid sting of debt. Their eyes grew tired, their hands restless. They wanted freedom, but they refused discipline. And discipline, I learned, is the key. A key that doesn't glitter, but one that fits every door worth opening. My own doors opened slowly. The first time a dividend arrived in my account, I felt the same chill I had when I touched that first banknote years earlier. It wasn't much enough for a single meal, nothing more. But the taste of that meal was different. It was flavored with autonomy. It reminded me of the mornings I had walked to work in the cold, my breath forming clouds in the air, while my dreams stayed locked in the back of my mind. This time, the food tasted of time itself, time I had reclaimed. If my words resonate with you, subscribe, comment your thoughts, and leave a like. It supports the journey. There were setbacks, of course. The silence of failure has its own sound. It's not loud, not violent. It is the emptiness of waking up to no notifications, of checking numbers that only move backward. It is the mirror that asks, did you misunderstand the rules? Did you misplace your trust? I often found myself standing in front of that mirror, tracing the reflection of my tired face with my eyes, as if searching for the man I was trying to become. Yet each failure left a scar that became a map. I learned to listen to the market, to the whispers of demand, to the sigh of opportunity hiding in plain sight. I learned that true passive income is not passive at all. It is the reward for listening more deeply than others, for building structures that keep breathing when you stop. The smell of old books still clings to my memory. I would sit with them in the dead of night, my lamp casting a thin cone of light, dust rising with each page turned. Knowledge became another form of currency, and with every lesson I bought, I earned a little more freedom. Support this channel by subscribing and sharing your dream below. Time became my greatest teacher. The ticking of the clock was no longer a threat, but a reminder. Each second carried a choice: invest it or waste it. Some nights, when exhaustion pressed down on me like a weight, I wanted to give up, to let the silence swallow me. But then I would close my eyes and remember that first sale, that first dividend, that first moment of proof. Proof that money could arrive while I rested, that my work could outlive my effort. I began to see life itself as a business, relationships, habits, choices, each one an investment. And the returns weren't always in cash. Sometimes the return was peace, sometimes clarity, sometimes just the quiet knowledge that I was walking toward freedom, step by patient step. I can still feel the chill of the window glass on my fingertips, the city lights blinking like coins in the distance. And I can still hear the whisper of my younger self asking, "Is it worth it?" The answer, though quiet, is clear. Yes, because passive income is not about sleeping while money works. It is about waking to a life you chose, not one that was chosen for you. If you stayed with me until the end, subscribe, like, and comment, so that these words will find you again tomorrow night. The mornings after those long nights always carried a certain heaviness. My body was tired, but my mind refused to rest. I would step outside into the cool air, the city already awake, streets humming with traffic, coffee shops releasing their sharp aroma into the dawn. I carried with me the exhaustion of struggle, but also the secret knowledge that something was slowly taking root beneath the surface. It felt like planting seeds in soil that no one else believed could bear fruit. I remember walking past glass towers filled with men and women in suits, their reflections multiplying in the mirrored walls. They looked sharp, efficient, polished, but their eyes betrayed the same fear I had once carried, the fear of running out of time, of selling every hour and never buying a single one back. I would stare at them and think, the difference between us is not talent, it is direction. They invest their hours outward, I invest mine inward, into systems that breathe even while I do not. Don't forget to subscribe, to leave a comment, and to press the like button before we dive deeper. Every gesture helps this message reach more people. The smell of money is strange when it arrives passively. It doesn't carry the sweat of labor, nor the ink-stained fingertips of a contract freshly signed. It feels clean, almost invisible, like air itself shifting through a room. And yet, with that invisibility comes danger. I learned that passive income can make you reckless if you forget the roots that feed it. One wrong move, one misjudged investment, and the silence turns heavy again, the silence of accounts drained, of opportunity lost. I lived through that silence more than once. I can still hear the click of a lock as I closed the door on a failed venture, leaving behind the smell of stale coffee, dust, and disappointment. But each time, the weight of the keys in my pocket reminded me. Failure locks some doors, but it opens others. I had to keep walking, keep listening to the rhythm of time, keep reflecting in the mirror until I saw not defeat, but refinement. If my words resonate with you, subscribe, comment your thoughts, and leave a like. It supports the journey. There came a point when my passive streams began to merge, each one flowing into the next, like rivers joining into a wider current. Rental income filled one stream, dividends another, digital ventures yet another. I could feel the hum of momentum beneath my life, and with it came something more valuable than money. Choice. The choice to spend my mornings in silence, sipping coffee while the world hurried. The choice to say no without fear. The choice to invest time into the things that mattered, rather than the things that merely paid. I remember vividly one evening when I sat in a dimly lit office, papers stacked in uneven towers, the smell of ink thick in the air. The lamp flickered, and in its reflection on the glass window, I saw myself older than I felt, yet more alive than I had ever been. The city outside pulsed with noise, but inside there was only the quiet certainty of a man who had turned time into an ally. Support this channel by subscribing and sharing your dream below. Yet with freedom came responsibility. I realized that the truest wealth was not in accumulating, but in sustaining, not in hoarding, but in building something that could last beyond me. Passive income, I learned, is fragile if it rests only on money. But when it rests on discipline, on knowledge, on patience, it becomes unbreakable. Late at night, when the ticking of the clock grew louder than the silence, I would walk through my apartment barefoot, the floor cold beneath me, the air heavy with the scent of night. I would touch the keys on my desk, hold them in my palm, and feel their weight. Each key was a lesson, each one a reminder that freedom is not given. It is built, piece by piece, sacrifice by sacrifice. If you stayed with me until the end, subscribe, like, and comment, so that these words will find you again tomorrow night. I often think back to the first room I ever worked in seriously. The wallpaper was peeling, the desk was secondhand, the chair uneven and creaking with every shift of my weight. The smell of dust and old paper filled the air, and through the thin window, I could hear the muffled sounds of the streetcars passing, voices drifting upward, footsteps fading into the night. That room wasn't impressive, not even comfortable. Yet it was the place where I discovered the truth. Wealth is not born in comfort, but in persistence. In those early nights, I would sit with a notebook, scribbling ideas until the ink stained my fingers and the pages curled at the edges. Sometimes the words blurred because my eyes were too tired to focus, but I refused to stop. I knew that every idea, no matter how small, carried the possibility of becoming a system, something that could work even when I slept. And so I planted them, like seeds scattered in uncertain soil, never knowing which would grow, but trusting that time would reveal their strength. Don't forget to subscribe, to leave a comment, and to press the like button before we dive deeper. Every gesture helps this message reach more people. The first online venture I built was fragile, like glass. It cracked under the weight of my inexperience. Orders delayed, customers dissatisfied, numbers that once gave me hope sinking into the red. I can still smell the faint plastic of the packages I packed myself, the tape sticking to my fingers, the sound of the printer spitting out labels late at night. Every mistake was loud in those days, echoing in the silence of a small room where I worked alone. Yet with each failure, I adjusted, I learned, and I grew quieter inside, less panicked, more patient. It was patience that saved me. Because passive income is not fast money, no matter what people whisper in crowded rooms or shout in glossy advertisements. It is slow, almost painfully slow. It is like waiting for dawn when the night feels endless. But then, when it arrives, it brings with it a light so steady, so calm, that you forget the weight of the darkness that came before. If my words resonate with you, subscribe, comment your thoughts, and leave a like. It supports the journey. I remember my first property. The walls were cracked, the air damp, the smell of mold clinging to the corners. Friends shook their heads, called it a mistake, warned me that I was throwing money into a pit. But I held the keys in my hand, cold and heavy, and I felt something different. I saw not what it was, but what it could become. I walked through the empty rooms, my footsteps echoing, and I imagined tenants living there, rent flowing month after month, long after the paint dried and the repairs were done. And when that day came, when the first rent arrived in my account, it was not just money, it was proof that vision is more valuable than sight. The years passed, and with them came new ventures. Dividends from stocks, royalties from content, automated systems running while I slept. Each one felt like a silent partner, invisible but loyal, working quietly in the background of my life. I would wake in the mornings, the smell of fresh coffee filling the room, and see numbers that had changed overnight. Small at first, then larger, like waves gaining strength as they approach the shore. Support this channel by subscribing and sharing your dream below. But even then, I never trusted the silence fully, because I knew how fragile it could be. I had lived through collapses, through ventures that vanished like smoke, leaving behind nothing but lessons written in the ashes. And so, I kept reflecting in the mirror, asking myself, are you building wealth, or are you chasing illusions? The mirror was unforgiving, but necessary. It reminded me that passive income is not magic. It is structure, discipline, and patience, dressed in silence. Sometimes, late at night, I would turn off all the lights and just sit in the dark, listening to the ticking of the clock. Each tick was a reminder of time slipping away, but also of time working for me. My money was out there moving, growing, breathing, even as I sat still. And in those moments, I understood what freedom truly meant, not endless riches, but the choice to let time serve me instead of steal from me. If you stayed with me until the end, subscribe, like, and comment, so that these words will find you again tomorrow night. There were winters when the cold seemed sharper than usual, when the mornings began with the sting of frost on the window and the breath of my own lungs hanging heavy in the air. Those winters taught me more than any book ever did, because in the silence of those mornings, when the city was still waking up, I would sit with my hands wrapped around a cup of coffee, steam rising into the dim light, and I would reflect on how far I had come. The weight of tiredness was always there, but underneath it pulsed a quiet certainty. The systems I had built were alive. I can still hear the echo of footsteps in empty hallways of offices I once rented, the smell of carpet cleaner mixed with the metallic tang of keys as they turned in locks. Those offices were never glamorous. Fluorescent bulbs buzzed overhead, papers piled in corners, printers coughed ink into the air. But within those walls, something invisible was growing. I was laying down foundations, invisible to most, that would one day allow me to step away from the noise and still hear the sound of money moving. Don't forget to subscribe, to leave a comment, and to press the like button before we dive deeper. Every gesture helps this message reach more people. There is a strange moment that comes when passive income begins to exceed active income. At first, it feels like a mistake, like the numbers are lying. You refresh the page again and again, certain something will disappear. But the numbers remain, steady, unwavering, like the tick of a clock. And with that realization comes something profound. The chains you carried so long have loosened. You are no longer bound by the old rhythm of trading hours for currency. You have bent time, if only slightly, to your will. I remember standing in front of a mirror the night it first happened. The reflection staring back at me was not victorious, not ecstatic. It was simply tired, with eyes shadowed by sleepless nights. And yet, in those eyes, there was a quiet flame, a recognition that all the failures, the false starts, the long nights of uncertainty had not been in vain. The mirror does not lie. It shows you not only who you are, but who you are becoming. If my words resonate with you, subscribe, comment your thoughts, and leave a like it supports the journey. But even freedom carries its burdens. When your income arrives without you moving a muscle, the temptation to grow complacent is strong. The silence becomes comfortable, the rhythm of money arriving like background music. Yet I learned quickly that comfort is a thief. It dulls the edge of hunger, and hunger is the sharpest tool an entrepreneur possesses. So I forced myself to stay awake longer than necessary, to read one more book, to test one more idea, to invest one more time even when I could have stopped. Because the truth is, passive income is not about stopping work. It is about choosing the work that matters most. I walked through neighborhoods where every building told a story. Some smelled of fresh paint and ambition, others of mildew and neglect. I learned to read those smells, those atmospheres, as if they were pages of a book. Opportunities hide in decay, just as risks hide in beauty. A cracked wall can house a fortune, and a polished tower can conceal ruin. That is the paradox of money. It never reveals itself honestly at first glance. Support this channel by subscribing and sharing your dream below. Over time, the streams multiplied. Digital projects ran while I slept. Investments whispered returns in the background of my life. Properties produced rent with the slow rhythm of the seasons. Each one was like a different clock, ticking at its own pace, yet all adding up to the same truth. Time had shifted in my favor. I no longer chased it. It flowed toward me. Yet even as the systems grew, I never stopped hearing the echo of my beginnings. The cheap chair creaking in a dusty room, the smell of ink on my hands, the anxiety of wondering if it would ever work. Those memories are anchors, and without them, freedom would feel weightless, meaningless. I keep them close, like old keys in my pocket, even if they no longer open the doors they once did. They remind me that every fortune is built on uncertainty. Every stream of passive income once began as a single drop in the silence of the night. Sometimes I sit in the dark, with only the ticking of the clock to keep me company. I think about how many people are still out there, selling their hours, waiting for permission to buy back their own time. And I wish I could tell each of them, it is possible. It is slow. It is painful. It demands patience and sacrifice. But it is possible. And once you feel the first moment of freedom, the first coin earned while you slept, you will never forget the taste of it. If you stayed with me until the end, subscribe, like, and comment, so that these words will find you again tomorrow night. The older I grew, the quieter my pursuit became. The hunger that once kept me awake at night softened into something calmer, something steadier. I still remember the smell of those long nights, coffee cooling on the desk, paper scattered like fallen leaves, the faint hum of old electronics working beside me. But now, when I think of passive income, I no longer see numbers on a screen. I see mornings with no alarm, evenings unhurried, conversations that are not cut short by obligation. I see time, the one currency we can never earn, back finally resting in my hands. There were moments when I wondered if it had all been worth it. The failures, the nights of doubt, the heavy silence when nothing worked. And yet, each scar taught me, each reflection in the mirror forced me to see not only my mistakes, but my resilience. Passive income was never about wealth alone. It was about reclaiming the right to live fully, to breathe without counting minutes, to stand in front of the mirror and recognize the man looking back. Don't forget to subscribe, to leave a comment, and to press the like button before we close. Every gesture helps this message reach more people. I keep the old keys in a drawer. Rusted now, heavy, no longer useful. They don't open any doors, but when I hold them, I remember every threshold I once crossed, every risk I once took. The ticking of the clock that haunted me has softened too. It no longer feels like time escaping. It feels like time given back. And in that silence, I finally understood. Freedom is not in the money, but in the life it allows you to shape. If you stayed with me until the end, subscribe, like, and comment, so that these words will find you again tomorrow night.